Daf Yomi, Tractate Chullin, page 17a. Top of the page is the words V'chol shchein hashtad darchiku lehu tefeh. And if so, all the more so now in exile when they are even more distant from the temple, the meat of desire should be permitted. Consequently, it is unnecessary for the Mishnah to teach this halacha. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Akiva hi, Tanya, ki yirchak mimecha makom asher yibchar Hashem Elokecha, lasum shemo sham, v'zavachta mibkarcha u'mitzonecha. Rabbi Akiva oimer, lo yibrakos u've'le'aseh lohen b'sar nechiro. שבתחילה הותר להן בשר נחירו משנכנסו לארץ נעשה להן בשר נחירו. Rather, Yosef said the Tanu teaches halacha is Rabbi Akiva, as it is taught in the Bride with regard to the verse, if the place that the Lord your God shall choose to put his name there be too far from you, then you shall slaughter of your herd and of your flock. Deuteronomy 12:21. Rabbi Akiva says the verse comes only to prohibit for them consumption of meat of an animal killed by means of stabbing rather than valid slaughter, as initially the meat of stabbing was permitted for them. When they entered into Eretz Yisrael, the meat of stabbing was forbidden to them, and it was permitted to eat the meat of an animal only after valid slaughter. Yosef added, and now that the Jewish people were exiled, might one have thought that stabbed animals are restored to their initial permitted state. Therefore, we learn in the Mishnah, one must always slaughter the animal to eat its meat. Rabbi Akiva savar b'sar ta'aba lo yisar klal, v'Yishmael savar b'sar nechira lo yishtere klal. The Gemara asks, with regard to what principle do they disagree? The Gemara answers that Rabbi Akiva holds the meat of desire was not forbidden at all, and Rabbi Ishmael holds the meat of stabbing was not permitted at all. Bishlam Rabbi Ishmael, Hainu dichtiv, v'shachades ben abako, el Rabbi Akiva, mai v'shachat, kodshim shani. The Gemara asks a series of questions. Granted, according to Rabbi Ishmael, who holds that the meat of stabbing was forbidden in the wilderness, that is the meaning of that which is written with regard to the burnt offerings sacrificed in the temple. And he shall slaughter the young bull. Leviticus 1:5. But according to Rabbi Akiva, what is the meaning of and he shall slaughter? Why would he slaughter if stabbing is permitted? The more answers, sacrificial animals are different, and slaughter is required in that case. By contrast, there was no obligation to slaughter non-sacrificial animals to eat their meat. Bishlam Ishmael, Hainu dichtiv, v'sar nechira lo lehem, Rabbi Akiva, mai v'sar nechira lo lehem, Yinach lehem b'moelei nechira shalohen, zo hi shchitason. Granted, according to Rabbi Ishmael, who holds that the meat of stabbing was forbidden in the wilderness, that is the meaning of that which is written, will flocks and herds be slaughtered for them, in Numbers 11:22, indicating that they slaughtered the animals in the wilderness. But according to Rabbi Akiva, what is the meaning of will flocks and herds be slaughtered for them? Ostensibly, the words "we stabbed him" should have been written. Okay? The Gemara answers, in the wilderness their stabbing is their slaughter. Okay? Bishop Rabbi Shmuel Hainu Nitna Shegel V'Niv Nitnam La B'Yado Eno Yechem B'Yamei Me'akel Hamiakel Patur Min Lechasois El Rabbi Kiva Mai Patur Min Lechasois. Granted, according to Rabbi Shmuel, that is the meaning of that which we learned in Mishnah 85. Came up again, 85. And 85 with regard to the mitzvah of covering the blood of an undomesticated animal or a bird. One who slaughters an undomesticated animal and the slaughter is not valid, and it became an unslaughtered carcass by his hand, and one who stabs an animal, and one who rips the simanim from their place before cutting them, invalidating the slaughter, is exempt from covering the blood. One must cover the blood of only an animal whose slaughter was valid. But according to Rabbi Kiva, why is one exempt from covering the blood of an animal that was stabbed, since, in his opinion, when they were commanded to cover blood, animals that were stabbed were permitted? Okay? Oh, you eat the sal, eat the sal. The Gemara answers, since the meat of stabbing was forbidden, it was forbidden, and the halachic status of stabbing is no longer that of slaughtering. Bishlam Rabbi Akiva. Wow. Bishlam Rabbi Akiva Jama Basar Taive Lo Yitzaklar Hanyichsiv Ach Kasher Yochel Et Atziv Et Ha'ayal Ken Tochlenu El Rabbi Shmuel Atziv Ayal Gufei Granted, according to Rabbi Kiva, who says that the meat of desire was not forbidden at all. That is the meaning of that which is written before they entered Eretz Yisrael. However, as the gazelle and the deer is eaten, so shall you eat of it. The pure and the impure may eat of it alike. Deuteronomy 12:22. This means that just as it is permitted to eat the meat of a gazelle and a deer in the wilderness in a state of ritual impurity, so may you eat them when you enter Eretz Yisrael, although at that point it will be prohibited to stab them and eat their meat, as their meat will be permitted only through slaughter, according to Rabbi Shmuel, who holds that the meat of desire was forbidden in the wilderness. Were the gazelle and the deer themselves permitted in the wilderness? They are not God's offerings. The Gemara answers, when the merciful one rendered the meat of desire forbidden, it was specifically the meat of a domesticated animal that is fit for sacrifice. But the merciful one did not render forbidden undomesticated animals that are not fit for sacrifice. By Rav Yirmiyah, Evre Basar Nechira, Sheichnisu le'Israel, Imohen Haaretz Mahu. Rabbi Yirmiyah raises his dilemma according to the opinion of Rabbi Kiva, who says that the meat of stabbing was permitted in the wilderness with regard to the limbs of the meat of stabbing that the Jewish people took with them into Eretz Yisrael. What is their halachic status? Eimas ilem b'sheva shekibshu hashudvar tomei yishteri lahu dichsiv ubatim leim kol tuv v'amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Rav koslei dechazirei besar nechira miboye. The Gemara asks when. With regard to what period does Rabbi Yirmiyah raise his dilemma? If we say that the dilemma is with regard to the 7 years during which they conquered the land, now non-kosher items were permitted for them during that period, as is written, and it shall be when Lord your God shall bring you into the land that he swore to your fathers, and houses full of all good things, and you shall eat and be satisfied. Deuteronomy 6:10, 11. And Rabbi Yirmi says that Rav says cuts of pig meat that they found in houses were permitted for them. Who would want to eat that? Okay, whatever. Is it necessary to say that the meat from the stabbing of a kosher animal was permitted? Rather, Rabbi Yirmiyah's dilemma is with regard to the period thereafter. And if you wish to say instead, let's see which teku this is. Okay. See? Let's have a look. It's the 7. It's hold on. It's the 200. Is it? No. Is it the 308th? No. Didehuro Ishtari. It would be. Not sure which one it is. Tomorrow, no. Well, anyway, I can't find that. It's one of the. All right. Anyway, Rabbi Yirmiyah's dilemma is with regard to the period hereafter. Maybe we can catch it with that. Yeah, it's actually that's I found it. Higati Matsasi Taimin. I found it. It's a 256 teku. Yep. Boyer Yirmiyah. Yeah. And we read this on March 2nd. This was Take right before Purim. Interesting. It was on Monday, March 2nd. So Purim was that for Jerusalem. Purim was that Wednesday. And yeah, interesting. Okay. So there you have it. It's the, what was it? It was the 256 teku. Yeah. Rabbi Yirmiyah's dilemma is with regard to the period after, and if you wish to say instead, actually his dilemma is with regard to 7 years during which they conquered the land, and perhaps when the forbidden food was permitted for them, it was specifically food from the spoils of Gentiles, but their own food forbidden. Their own forbidden food was not permitted. The Gemara concludes, teku. Okay. This dilemma shall stand unresolved. Amar Rabba Sheinis, Chol Shekadim, Ulam Shekadim, Chol Shekadim, might. Rabbi says you explain the phrases in the Mishnah, all slaughter and one may always slaughter. In what way do you explain the phrase one may slaughter with any item that cuts? And if you would say that it means, whether with a flint or with the glass shards or with stock of reed. Okay? But isn't this phrase taught in a manner similar to those other phrases in the Mishnah? If these phrases, all slaughter and when we always slaughter, are referring to those that slaughter, this phrase too is referring to those that slaughter. And if those phrases are referring to those that are slaughtered, this phrase too is referring to those that are slaughtered. The first two phrases in the Mishnah were explained as referring to animals that are slaughtered. The first phrase was interpreted to include birds, and the second phrase was interpreted as referring to the halacha that meat may be eaten only through slaughter of the animal. Kusi Chadash Yisrael Mishumid Lo Ilam Mishachdim B'Yom L'Layla B'Mirash Gag B'Mirash Svino Chol Shachdim B'Mitzal B'Mischuchis B'Mikurum Shalkone. Rather, Rava said that the entire mission is referring to those that slaughter. The initial phrase means everyone slaughters, although an identical phrase was used in the first mission to A. Both are necessary. One is to include a Samaritan, and one is to include a Jewish transgressor. The second phrase, one must always slaughter, means both during the day and at night, both on a rooftop and on a ship. And there is no concern that it will appear that he is slaughtering in an idolatrous manner to the hosts of heaven or to the god of the sea. The phrase, one may slaughter with any item that cuts, means whether with a flint or with the glass shards or with the stock of reed. Chutz mi magal ketzir v'magero avod yishmol begam mishadal shal gole kim gero shaninu. The Mishnah states, except for the serrated side of the harvest sickle and the saw, Shmuel's father would notch a knife and send it to Israel to ask if it is fit for slaughter, and would notch a knife in a different manner and send it to Israel in order to determine the type of notch that invalidates the slaughter. They sent to him, from Israel, that the principle is, we learned that the notch that invalidates the slaughter is like a saw, whose teeth point upward, as it rips the simanim with every draw of the knife back and forth. Ouch. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan, we learn the Brisa. We'll stop here and continue in the next Amud.